Silverman's 2-decade run with the Rays is ending, and so is an era.
You are Locked On Rays, your daily Tampa Bay Rays podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into the Locked On Rays podcast. Locked On Rays is part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And we are Kevin and Ulises.
And we are lifelong Rays fans who've been podcasting about the Tampa Bay Rays since 2019.
Later on today's show, we'll discuss Matt Silverman's legacy as Rays team president. In a few minutes, the Rays new ownership group will bring new priorities and a new identity. But to start, let's get to the recent news that longtime Rays president Matt Silverman is stepping down from the organization.
And we're going to talk about all of that thanks to 5-Hour Energy. Stop it with the boring, flavorless caffeine, people. It's time to get your caffeine a flavor upgrade with 5-Hour Energy shots. Go to 5hourenergy.com or Amazon today. That's right, Kev. Silverman's exit signals the official close of the Sternberg era. He's a guy that has been there for 22 years, since 2004. It's been a long time. 2 pennants, a lot of division titles, 4 for what this AL East has become. That's a lot. Leaves, I think, with some bitter sweet taste in his mouth, though.
Yes. He and other cohorts accomplished a lot in those 22 years, probably items that were completely unexpected, especially when the old ownership group took over. But I think a lot of that is stained because of the recency of the stadium deal not getting completed and all the comments that Silverman and others made along the way, especially as the hurricane was going on and Tropicana Field got destroyed. It was just bad blood, if you will. And it makes sense that both sides, Silverman and the new ownership group, are kind of parting ways and going in different directions, which we'll discuss in the second segment. But I feel like, before the stadium deal broke down, that, relatively Matt Silverman was in good standing among the fan base. But over the past year, you mentioned his name and it's bad vibes, if you will.
It's tough, right? To be the spokesperson of something you might not really believe in, but you have to, or you believe in it, but it's probably the wrong thing to say to a community. But he's been there for 22 years. We say that it signals the official close because he's been there right next to Stu this whole time.
Yes.
Even for the casual fan, not the Locked On Rays listener. If you're a Locked On Rays listener, I have to tell you news. You're not a casual listener. You are in it, okay? Because the Rays are not even 500 in late September, and you're still watching Locked On Rays.
Exactly.
You are far gone. You're like us. You're in it deep. So not us, not Locked On Rays people, but the normal fan, the casual fan that just watches here and there, they've seen Matt Silverman's face for 2 decades plus now. So they at least know, oh, that guy is pretty close to ownership, or at least, oh, isn't he the owner? Something like that. Like, that's how long he has been. And I think that's great for a fan base to have anchors, pillars, especially for a fan base that doesn't really have that on the field. Not usually, at least the corporate world of the Rays does have the names being kind of solid for a while. So that is why it's a close, because that guy, even the casual fan that might just recognize his face, not even his name, that's gone now.
Right.
So I think that is a departure from what we've always known.
Yeah. And we can't forget about what he and so many others did with the Rays on the field, of being forward thinking, being frontier thinking, driving that analytics identity that so many other organizations have piggybacked off or stolen of, hey, we need to try to do it the Rays way, where we're balling on a budget, where we're winning on a lower payroll. And obviously that's something that, if you're a Rays fan, you wished you got more money spent and you're able to keep your established players a little bit longer. But you can't forget about that. All in all, this was a winning franchise for the most part during his tenure. And I think probably one of the cooler things is, Matt Silverman in 22 years at the helm, he probably got to see the growth of the Rays fan base generation to generation, where you have some kids that were Rays fans or Devil Rays fans in 2004, 2005, 2008. And then over the course of 22 years, they have their own kids and they become Rays fans. So I think that is probably something that he and his team are probably, pretty happy about as far as the legacy goes too.
And also, in 22 years, his whole family has grown, right? Like he himself has grown. So it is a long time. And I think we should look back at these last 22 years since 04 and notice, like we did last week with the chase of Carlos Peña's home run record and how the franchise has changed. He's been basically at the helm of that. If Stu isn't available for comment, Matt Silverman is. So like basically that has been the go-to for the last 2 decades. And I think that's no longer happening. That is an end of an era. But the question isn't just who is leaving. It's what comes next for this franchise.
This episode is brought to you by Zippix toothpicks. Whether you're looking for nicotine satisfaction or an energy boost, Zippix, they've got you covered with their nicotine and caffeine infused toothpicks. For those nicotine users out there, Zippix provides a discreet way to satisfy cravings and the hand-to-mouth habit without vaping or smoking. Zippix also can be helpful as you work to reduce your dependence on vaping. It's available in 6 great flavors with 2 milligram and 3 milligram nicotine options. And if you need energy without the crash, their caffeine toothpicks are a game changer as well. Take it from me. I've used them and I love them. So you should too. And you can do that by going to zippixtoothpicks.com and using code LOCKEDON for 10% off your first order. You must be 21 or older to order. And a little warning, nicotine is an addictive chemical. That is zippixtoothpicks.com. Promo code LOCKEDON. Zip more, smoke less with Zippix toothpicks.
Thank you for tuning in to Locked On Rays, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Well, with new ownership that's coming, that means there's going to be new priorities and likely a new identity, right, Kev? It can't just be the same. Even if the idea is the same, goal is the same, they're different people. They're different humans. They're going to have little things that they also want to impose because now it's their team. So there's something new coming. And we should expect something new, not just BAU.
Yeah, and reports are that the $1.7 billion sale could close after the September 28th finale. Of course, the figurehead of that is Jacksonville developer Patrick Zalupski. And to your point, I think with any organizational change, whether it's professional baseball, private, public sector, whatever it may be, you have your own team. You have your own guys that you want to get in there and get things done. Not to say that Matt Silverman and Brian Auld, who we really haven't touched that much on because Brian Auld is he's floating out there of he could be involved, could not be involved. That's still something to be determined. But Zalupski, I think he has his right-hand man in Ken Babby, who is the owner of the Jacksonville Jumbo Shrimp and the Akron Rubber Ducks, so a AAA team and a AA baseball team. And he probably leans on him quite a bit. And they have probably workshopped over the last several months and or years. And you want that guy to take the lead and take the role. And as an aside, I mean, it's a little bit obvious because again, Matt Silverman and Brian Auld, they're so tied into the stadium deal breakdown that if you're going to be going out and soliciting Pinellas County, St. Petersburg, City of Tampa, Hillsborough County, I got to be honest, I think a lot of those folks, the elected officials and the administration staff and anybody involved in government in those counties and cities, they hear or see Stu Sternberg, but Matt Silverman and Brian Auld, they say, yeah, we really don't want to deal with those guys. So you also have to bring in fresh faces to resolve and rebuild those relationships.
It's a fine line between, hey, they've got the connections, hey, they know how to move around these sorts of people, to, well, they know them too well and they don't really like each other. Like that, there's a line that Zalupski and his team have to take into consideration when taking the advice of the former owner, so or the former regime.
And to your point about that, I think that's astute. Where, you know, Silverman and Auld and Sternberg, even, you know, they've been through this. They weren't able to get it across the finish line. I mean, they could have if they would have just signed their end of the bargain, but they can kind of work through that government red tape with Zalupski and Babby and his team, but more behind the scenes. And I think that's why they're kind of transitioning or sticking on as, you know, advisors, part ownership, whereas they're not, you know, faces of the franchise anymore.
And with the declining of being that type of figurehead and just being in the back end with advisory, I mean, wouldn't it be nice to just have 10 minutes of just honest, real, unfiltered Matt Silverman talk and say, okay,
yeah,
why are you stepping down? Really? Oh, you're thinking about family? Okay, that's for Rays Radio. That's for, you know, the Forbes article.
Mm-hmm.
They've already written about you. You know, dude was 27 in 2004, by the way, younger than us. That's insane.
Wow.
Anyway, so wouldn't it be nice to just get 10 minutes of unfiltered Matt Silverman? Like, why is this decision happening? Are you done with baseball? Are you looking forward to the next thing? You've been in Tampa Bay now for 20 years. Are you moving? Your family's here. Like, what's is it just the fact of removing yourself from what could have become, after the whole stadium thing, a toxic environment?
Right.
I mean, you've also lived through COVID, right? And that was probably a mess. I mean, we saw it as a fan base, and we saw it as like human beings, but for them, they also have to put on a show. They have to put in like entertainment. They have to take care of like, you know, hundreds, thousands of people even. Like how does that not tear you down?
Yeah.
It would just be great to just have that 10-minute of unfiltered conversation with Matt Silverman that probably nobody's going to get unless he writes an autobiography one day.
Right. Or unless you know him, you know, close and personally. And yeah, he's dealt with a lot between the transition, the COVID, the hurricanes, the stadium saga, and the years and years of that. And if we're being frank, I think he's made enough money where he could step away and say, I want to do what I want, or I need a break, or I just need a change here and there. But as far as the new ownership goes, I mean, everything is on the table. As far as obviously the big ticket item is the new stadium, but also what's going to be the payroll philosophy, what's going to be the scouting philosophy, and I wouldn't even put this totally out of the question, maybe even a name change. I mean, they can kind of do what they want at this point. If they really want to cement themselves as, you know, they want to put their own stamp on things. I think everything is up for debate here.
I think putting a new stamp on things, that's a very big way of doing it, and a very natural way of doing it. Literally, Stu Sternberg did it too. Yeah, it took him 4 years after, or 2 years after, whatever it was. But I wouldn't put that as a shocking thing. But we do know that they have said, or at least from their quotes, or from what has been understood, that the front office is going to operate as it does. But like you said, maybe they do want to, you know, change around the edges somewhat, and that could ultimately change the identity. It's I think it's a fabulous time right now to speculate and put good vibes out there because we just want the best for this team and we want the best for this franchise. And hopefully that does equate into a bigger payroll that could get better players, that could get us into the playoffs constantly, deeper, and ultimately that championship that we all want.
Yes, that would all be nice. Now, after 2 decades of building a contender on a budget, what is Silverman's legacy? Let's discuss.
PrizePicks, the daily fantasy app where making the right call can actually pay off. Isn't that nice? And you and I make decisions every day. Kevin does as well. But on PrizePicks, being right means cashing. And wouldn't it be nice to be right and get some green Skittles back? Well, PrizePicks does exactly that. It's quick, easy, and everybody's favorite way to follow along with football. So today, download the PrizePicks app and use code LOCKEDONMLB. You get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. So again, download the PrizePicks app, use code LOCKEDONMLB, and you get $50 in lineups after your first $5 play. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Caffeine just got a flavor upgrade, people. 5-hour energy shots deliver tasty caffeine in 17 bold flavors. 17? You heard right. That's a 1 and a 7 together. Each 2-ounce shot packs the caffeine of a premium 12-ounce cup of coffee, plus B vitamins and nutrients with 0 sugar and 0 crashes. Isn't that the perfect combination? You know it. Your 9 to 5 will no longer have to be boring, okay? This is the difference. Your upgrade of flavor for your day, your 5-hour energy shots. Get the favorites you love or be bold and try something new in store and online at www.5hourenergy.com or Amazon today.
Thank you for listening to the Locked On Rays podcast and making us your first listen every day. We do appreciate it. We are part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. So all in all, I think Matt Silverman's legacy comes down to turning the Rays, Devil Rays, then Rays, into a sustainable winner. But of course, the lack of stadium will not and cannot be forgotten. We saw how many renderings over the years, but
too many.
No shovels in the ground. We saw press conferences about announcements, but no shovels in the ground. We even heard about the Rays maybe splitting games and seasons with Montreal, but no shovels in the ground.
It's been too many PowerPoint decks. You know,
Yes.
can you make a PowerPoint deck on that? And then that presentation never happens. Yeah.
I feel bad for their I feel bad for their development team, marketing team, foreign hypes and the like, where how many PowerPoint decks are we going to do on the same thing?
Like, come on. Yeah, no, it's look, I think if you want to give him a fair treatment on Matt Silverman's legacy, it is that. He turned this franchise around with other people, but at the helm as the president of the Rays, he made.
But he was also instrumental in, hey, we're going to bring in. Yeah, he was also instrumental in, hey, we're going to bring in Andrew Friedman. And then when Andrew Friedman leaves, we're going to bring in Eric Neander. We're going to go from Joe Madden to Kevin Cash. So that also has to be underscored.
Yeah, he's at the top where he needs to make the decisions that, even if it's one decision, that person that he is giving power to is going to make multiple, and they're going to be very involved. So like his decisions are obviously very, very important. So I think if you want to give him a fair treatment, he was at the helm to turn them into a reputable winner, 100%. But like you said, the lack of stadium is not going to be forgotten and should not be forgotten. Like you need to have the good and the bad, and he definitely did a lot of good. But the lack of stadium, and especially, man, like if say the stadium also never got done, but there wasn't the quippy quotes that we saw after the hurricane up to the the March deadline from Matt Silverman, which I think if you now are a Locked On Rays listener, if you are an OG Rays fan, if you've been in the weeds with this, you understand that he's just doing his job. That's just his job. He has to be a spokesperson for, Stu Sternberg and the likes. But it came out of your mouth. So that does turn people off. And I think even if the stadium hadn't been done without those quippy quotes, he might not get, I don't want to say stained, but like his image wouldn't have been as negatively impacted without those quotes, even if the stadium wasn't done. But the quotes did not help him. And the attitude in those hearings. Remember those attitudes. Remember the affront, and Brian Ault. We'll get to him when he really stepped down. But it wasn't pretty, man. It wasn't great.
No, it wasn't. And just to recap here, Silverman, he served as the team president for 9 years before he was named the director of baseball operations in 2014. He returned to the role of team president in 2017. So a couple different titles throughout his tenure. But I think all in all, over those 22 years, he was, part of the core. He was part of the C-suite with the Rays. So he was heavily involved in anything and everything dealing with the Tampa Bay Rays. And with Silverman, if you were to give a grade on his tenure with the Tampa Bay Rays, what would it be?
Oh, that's a good one. I think the stadium bumps him down considerably.
Yeah. He didn't do the final exam. He did everything else. He did all his worksheets.
Even if the final exam wasn't just a stadium, it's a big chunk. It's like, you got the multiple choice part of the exam, and then like the free write, the text where you have to do your essays. That part was not great. The multiple choice, fantastic. You killed it, man. Like you nailed it. Like you did the opposite of a Christmas tree.
Yeah.
You killed that. So I think if you have to grade him, I think you have to go B-. Like he should get an A+. That's how good of a job he did. But the stadium, the quippy quotes, the attitude of affronting a community saying, no, we want to have baseball for generations to come, but we'll send a team to bleeping Montreal. Like, that's, what are you doing? A fan fest before a playoff game? You're going to put a big billboard, let's move to Montreal? What are you doing? What are you doing? What is the thought process here? So, on the field, A+. Community relations about the stadium, F-. So I think I'm being nice by giving him a B-.
No, I think that's fair. And again, that goes back to this new ownership group saying, we can't have Silverman in that type of role going forward. Plus,
get your feet wet though. What would be your grade?
I'll give him the same thing. I'll give him a B-. I'm vacillating between a C+ and a B-, but I think
I'm trying to be nice, so I'm giving him B-, but it really feels like a 78, man.
Right, exactly. But also the politics. I feel like the politics for Silverman, Ald, and others on the current regime don't really align with the new regime. It seems very red and blue, just based on Zalewski's relationships with, some powerful people in the state of Florida and elsewhere. But yeah, I think
maybe they can be the beginning of a reunited States of America.
Yeah,
look at the Rays.
I wouldn't bet on that.
Together, holding hands, breaking bread, and breaking bed. Maybe I don't know.
Yeah, if they do that, we'll give Silverman an A+. Do want to mention a couple comments from the listeners out there before we close here. Our buddy Ryan Hill says, you said it on the pod, these guys don't necessarily have a good reputation with the folks the new owners will need to work with in order to get a new stadium. They will bring in their own guys for this. It will be interesting to see what they do on the baseball side. And then Douglas Bautista, another friend of the program, I think it is important to bring in new leadership. Silverman and Ald, and with Stu Sternberg, they've been there a long time and unable to get a stadium deal done. Trust has been lost with local officials, so it's best to start fresh with new leadership. And yeah, I'll also be curious to see what Silverman's next act is. Is he just going to, I assume he's made enough money, he's got a good retirement, he can live on what he's earned over the years, plus what he did in the hedge fund industry as well, previous to coming to the Rays. But does he want to work for another team, or just have a little piece of the pie as, serving on a ancillary advisory board?
Or could we see him be a future owner or future part of an ownership of a new team in Orlando? What? Nashville? What? Yeah. Orlando, Portland, wherever the new expansion team is. I mean, he's got the rapport, he's got the success, he's got the pedigree. I'm sure any new expansion owner partnership group would love to have Matt Silverman.
Indeed. All right. On that note, thank you all for listening to the Locked On Rays podcast. We appreciate it. Stay safe, and we will talk to you next week.